first of all, thank you very much, Dr. Abdullah. And this meeting is one of the few meetings in whole UAE which are actually remaining purely scientific. Other meetings have degenerated into commercial meetings. So, Dr. Abdullah, thank you very much to ask to give me a talk about infective endocarditis. So, this is a summation of the endocarditis which have been now 400 years old since it discussed in Gustav Mahler Singer, because mostly at that time because dental abscess and dental cavity, and this is the AI-generated picture. So, the things have changed since the Samani lectures of Osler, and Osler gave a lecture nearly 150 years back talking about the diagnosis and challenges of endocarditis. And unfortunately, if you review the literature, nothing much unchanged over these 150 years, and we still struggle with making the right diagnosis of endocarditis. Despite all the advances, the reason is that despite all the advances, mortality remains high. So we have tremendous advances regarding antibiotic, regarding diagnostic abilities, and regarding treatment, but the mortality remains in the range of 20 to 40%, very high mortality, and big amount of patients, 50% of patients will require surgery during the course of the illness. And there is a shift in the pattern of endocarditis over the time, particularly our population getting older. So in Fujifilm Hospital, all the endocarditis we encountered on the age of 50 to 70 years, predominance of staphylococcus, particularly the MSSA and MRSA, and the healthcare acquired patients in the hospital comes with the intubated ventilator state, running fever, then we discover vegetation. And more importantly, that more patients had implanted devices, and particularly implanted defibrillator and catheter pacemakers. These are the patients which are very much challenging to diagnose in the field of endocarditis. So the European Society came with the guidelines last year, and Dr. Rozani is very much aware. And these guidelines were relatively big guidelines. There were 94 pages of these guidelines, and these guidelines focus on 3 or 4 more areas, particularly main areas regarding diagnostic challenges. So what are the new modalities regarding diagnosis? And there were more expanded indications for surgery. So the role of surgery has been expanded. And more importantly, what we talked about is that not all the patients should stay in the hospital for 6 weeks, which was the norm before for antibiotic treatment. The guidelines say that, and I will discuss a little bit towards the end of the talk, that which patient can be safely discharged home to take outpatient therapy, which is a big relief for the patient, no need to stay in the hospital. So the thing is that the diagnostic criteria for endocarditis are based on the same criteria, or Duke's criteria, which came many, many years back, but the guidelines of the European Society modified a little bit. So the clinical criteria, whatever we know of, for example, fever and vascular phenomena, immunological phenomena, they remain unfortunately minor criteria. So they're not a major criteria, they remain a minor criteria. The major bulwark of diagnosis of endocarditis render on the microbiological criteria, which are the major criteria, and I will not go into it. When you get a culture positive, you will talk to your infectious disease specialist, and they will come to a conclusion. But as a cardiologist, we are concerned with the diagnostic abilities, and the guidelines that talk about the imaging technology. And among the imaging technology, 3 new fields have come up beyond the echocardiography. For all these years, all the emphasis was on echocardiography, but now the guidelines that talk about emerging new technologies, particularly the anatomical imaging and the molecular imaging for the field of endocarditis. And what are these technologies? We'll just go to down the line. So certainly, transthoracic echocardiography remains the first thing to be diagnosed, to be used in the field of endocarditis. For multiple reasons, it is available in all the hospitals, available bedside, and can give a reasonable diagnosis if it's positive, so specificity high, but the sensitivity not very high for transthoracic echocardiography, and can identify suspicious structures as small as 5 millimeters. So once again, the transthoracic echocardiography remain a first line of diagnosis ability to be used in the field of echocardiography. However, many of the patients will require transesophageal echocardiography because of superior spatial resolution, and particularly we can actually imagine the posterior structures very, very well. And so it's very, very important when you have a suspicion of endocarditis and the transthoracic echocardiography remain negative, and you have a prosthetic wall, which actually makes sometimes the posterior vegetations hidden behind the acoustic reverberations of the prosthetic wall. And if you have intercardiac devices, then again, transesophageal echocardiography comes to the front. Posterior structures are sometimes difficult to visualize from transthoracic echocardiography. Like in this patient, you will think that you may even pass up the transthoracic echocardiography practice normal, but if you look carefully, you see a very, very clear oscillating vegetation. and attached to the mitral leaflet. And you can see this vegetation is pretty big. It's nearly 2 centimeter in the long axis and 1 centimeter in the short axis. So this transesophageal echography is needed when the suspicion is high. There are certain features which are seen on echocardiography which make it as a major criteria, and one of the major criteria is very simple, everybody is intuitive to understand, is the vegetation. And the vegetations are important at times. This is an oscillating structures attached to the cardiac walls or intercardiac structures, not necessarily always in the wall. Sometimes it can be attached to the aorta, sometimes it can be attached to the vascular structures. And this is seen by imaging, and obviously during surgery or necroscopy, you can see a proper vegetation which is attached to an endocardial structure. So vegetation remains as a major imaging criteria for the diagnosis of endocarditis. Another point which has to be looked is the emerging role of three-dimensional echocardiography. The advantage of 3D is that it can allow a three-dimensional reconstruction of the image. So thereby, sometime in the two-plane, you can actually underestimate the echocardiography by the size of the vegetation. So 3D echocardiography is very much accurate in identifying the extent of the vegetation, the size of the vegetation, and why it is so. Because now in the 2023 guidelines, they say if a vegetation more than 10 millimeter, this is one of the indications for surgery in the patient, even in the absence of embolism. So the 3D echocardiography comes there, but one thing is seen very clearly is the role of echocardiography to look at the complications. So one of the complications we can look at is the abscess cavity. And abscess cavity is nothing but like an abscess cavity which occurs everywhere in the body. It's actually a radiolucent space which is filled with purulent material or a necrotic material and attached to most typically located in the paravalvular structure. And in that case, you can see by transthoracic echocardiography. And if you have a 3D echocardiography, you can actually do a spatial reconstruction and come to a better calculation. So again, an abscess cavity makes it as a major criteria from the imaging point of view to diagnose the endocarditis. Another thing is the pseudoaneurysm, which is when the abscess cavity empties to a cavity to our intracardiac structures and gives rise to communicating channels where the blood goes in and out much more freely. This again makes the diagnosis of endocarditis more 100% nearly practically, and actually is one of the indications for surgery. So abscess cavity, pseudoaneurysms, and vegetations are the three major criteria on the echocardiography which one can see. So the sensitivity of the transthoracic echocardiography is much more lower than transesophageal echocardiography, and when you do the TE for them, the sensitivity kind of reaches nearly 90%. But the European guidelines, they come out with the newer criteria for the diagnosis, and one thing which has come up is the emerging role of multi-slice CT or contrast CT angiography. Contrast CT angiography is very, very important, not for the diagnosis of vegetation, but particularly they are more superior, even more superior than echocardiography if you look at the perivalvular complications such as the abscess, pseudoaneurysm, and dehiscence. In that case, this is actually a class 1B indication to do a multiplex CT. I will suggest that every patient you suspect endocarditis and you find a vegetation, you should do a contrast CT scan if the kidney function allow, because this will allow you to look at the things which are not so many apparent seen on TE. TE is a skilled skill, and you have to make the diagnosis within few minutes of transesophageal, but the CT scan, you could do a reconstruction at your own ease. Another area which has come up in prominence is the role of the PET scan. So the PET CT scan using a radiotracer dye, which is nothing but 18 FDG, can actually accumulate in the perivalvular infected area. And this is very, very important, particularly in a periprosthetic endocarditis, particularly 3 months after surgery, because before 3 months you can have accumulation FDG when the infection is not there also, but after 3 months this is pretty sensitive and specific, and you can actually increase the specificity by giving the patient glucose rich, by giving a metabolic suppressant over 24 hours. So you have to actually give the patient a lot of glucose in last 24 hours, carbohydrate diet, and this will actually suppress the normal uptake, and main infection will take the uptake, and this can give a lot of sensitivity when you have prosthetic endocarditis. This is very useful when the person has multivalvular lesions. So if you have mitral wall and aortic wall and you suspect endocarditis and you do some vegetation, but a hot spot in one of the wall makes that wall is the culprit lesion, so you can actually take care of that wall surgically, leaving the other wall intact. So this FDG glucose is also very, very important. Another last metabolic issue which has come up, which is important, is the radio-labeled leukocytes, which actually accumulate in the infected area in a time-dependent fashion. So the sensitivity is not very high, but it's highly specific in the field of diagnosis of endocarditis. Dr. Abdullah, I may take one more minute if you don't mind, please. So what is the new thing which has come in 2023 guidelines is the expanding role of surgery. So obviously one common indication for surgery is uncontrolled heart failure. So heart failure is an important component, and heart failure will come because of valvular destruction, mitral regurgitation, aortic regurgitation, or due to abscess cavity ruptures or pseudoaneurysm cavities. But what the guidelines talk about, they talk about uncontrolled infection as a indication for surgery. So when you talk about uncontrolled infection, so I will say that if somebody has got a pseudoaneurysm or has got an abscess cavity, this is an indication for surgery, and it's a class 1B indication. But the guidelines now talk about if you have an organism which is resistant, for example, MRSA or resistant infection of fungi, then you find a vegetation. This is also because of a class 2 indication for surgery. Further, lastly, is to prevent an embolism. If you have vegetation more than 10 millimeter after one or more embolic episodes, that is the indication for surgery. And if the vegetations are more than 10 millimeter and not respond to the antibiotic, but no embolism, and the patient is low risk for surgery, it again becomes a class 2 indication for surgery. So the change in the surgery is procedural endocarditis, in the ischemic stroke, expanding indication in the hemorrhagic stroke, and more liberal use of surgery for the prevention of embolism. Please, if you find a vegetation more than 10 millimeter, don't keep the patient, transfer to a center where surgical facilities are available. I think that should be enough.
Excellent. Thank you very much.